Hello everyone, my name is Councillor Millie Earl and I'm the leader of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. Welcome to our Leaders Live today, where we're going to be talking about supporting local families. And for that topic, I'm joined by Councillor Richard Burton, who is the portfolio holder for children, families, education and skills, and will be helping me answer some of these questions today. So we're going to talk a little bit first about some of the initiatives we have to improve the lives of local children and young people. Then we're going to talk, answer some of the questions that have come in first, and then we'll go to some of the live questions after that. So please do, if you have questions, continue submitting them and we'll try and get to as many as we can. And if we don't get to them all, then we'll come back and answer on whatever medium you have asked that question. So I wanted to talk first about some of the work that we're doing around play parks. When our administration came into power in 2023, we really wanted to provide good quality, accessible and inclusive play spaces for every child across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. And so for the last couple of years, we've been working on a play strategy, which is really around defining what that play looks like, but also working with communities to make sure that they get what they need within their community that's appropriate to the children there and that's going to interest them. So we've had some really good news recently. We got that play strategy through Poole Council, and we are now investing £3.9 million across our 100 play areas, and about £500,000 of that will be going towards repairing a lot of the damage. I know we've been incredibly frustrated about some of the state of our play parks, and it's really important that we get them up into a really good condition. So I'm delighted that that money's come through. And I also had the really great pleasure a couple of weeks ago to open the new soft play down at Boscombe Kings Park Leisure and Learning Centre. And it was just fantastic. We had lots of local families there. It is such a good facility. It's not just the soft play, there's also paddle courts as well. There's still retaining some of the cheer facilities that are there, and of course a cafe too, and we've still got all that learning space upstairs. So I really recommend families to go and make the most of that brilliant facility. It was really good to open it, and it's really just so important that young people have somewhere where they can learn how to interact with others, they can boost their own confidence, they can exercise and improve their health by being active and really playing with other children. Right, so I'm going to pass over to Councillor Burton, who's going to tell us a little bit about children's social care and where we are as a council with that. Richard.
Oh, hello. Yes, as I said, I'm Councillor Richard Burton. I've got the children's portfolio. Improving our children's services has been quite a priority for the whole council. Despite the significant and ongoing pressures placed upon local government, as you're probably all aware of, we've consistently invested in improving our services for the benefit of the local children and young people. We Ofsted visitors last year in December, and the inspection found a positive transformation of the service, and it rated as good, which was a great result. This means that we're now delivering a good level of help and support that the children of BCP need and deserve. Our Children's Social Care Service have come a long way since the previous Ofsted rating, and I've watched that happen over the last couple of years and made a real tangible progress and support the people who need our help most. There's still work to be done, of course, but everything at the council, everybody at the council is united in our aim to continuing this good work into the future.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I think you're going to tell us a little bit about supporting children with special educational needs as well.
Yes. So children's special education needs, now our inspection for that is coming up in the near future. Around 2/3 of BCP Council's budget money is spent on providing services when people need support most. So that's children and vulnerable adults and keeping them safe. Improving the experience of those families who apply for SEND support remains an absolute priority of the council. The falling number of SEND tribunals involved BCP Council reflects the improvements that we're making in our SEND services, but we know there's still a huge amount of work to be done. But we're committed to achieving the best for our children and young people in BCP who need extra support to fulfil their full potential. All councils are facing a growing gap between the cost of delivering the rising demand for SEND support and the funding that central government provides to deliver the service. It's not just BCP. A recent National Audit Office report that 43% of local authorities will have deficits exceeding or close to the reserves by March next year due to SEND services. So alongside our local MPs, we've been working with the government to help them understand the issues and negotiate a solution that is best interest for families in our area. But until the central government have established a long-term answer for the local authorities, we're looking at a temporary solution to borrow about £57.5 million to fund the estimated expenditure. And that is over and above the £64.5 million grant that's being made available for the government.
Thank you, Richard. I was just going to mention some of the work we do as a council on our apprenticeships programme, making sure that we're kind of providing that ongoing education to residents. And actually at BCP Council, we have 157 colleagues who are employed as apprentices or doing apprenticeships within their role. We also have a programme for young people aged 18 to 25, so just those that are leaving school, but actually those who are on an education, health and care plan. So that's when a young person may have had some special educational needs. If they can then come to us as council, and we provide spaces across 30 of our areas in the council to 9 young people a year to be able to take part in that programme and support them in doing that. So they get a really good experience to learn how to be within the workplace and be able to put their skills into really good use. It's very heartening going to those celebration events. It's always something I really look forward to. We also have a trade apprenticeship programme, and that invests within our communities. It makes sure that we have people with the skills for things like our really important trades areas, an area of our economy that is vital to all of us, really. So we're really keen to support that. And of course, across our council-owned assets, we've got a lot of them. It's really important that we have the right staff to be able to do that work. And I don't think it's just about actually supporting the work of the council or the buildings or anything else. Actually, it's about investing in the futures of local people and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to get a job, get the skills that they need and live a really fulfilled life. So we're going to move on to some of our pre-submitted questions here. So we've got one from Susan Stockwell on Facebook, and she says that Ofsted has highlighted the need to improve work with children at risk of exploitation. Do Children's Services have named contacts within Dorset Police to help achieve this, given that exploitation can involve criminal exploitation, for example, pimping, use in thefts, as well as use in drug distribution? So Richard, you're going to answer that one for Sue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for the question and for reading with detail our Ofsted report. So the recent Ofsted inspection, our children's social care services were rated good, as I said earlier, but that's also in terms of safeguarding work. However, we know that there's further work that we need to do in relationship to our partnerships working and how the full network responds to children being exploited. There's not one, but there's several leads in contact with Dorset Police because there's several strands to exploitation, including county lines, modern day slavery, sexual and criminal exploitation, and potential crimes from these. The key message from Ofsted relates to how we can galvanise everyone to play their part in safeguarding children from exploitation, which includes not just professional agencies, but our voluntary sector and communities, as well as neighbours, friends and families, in fact, everybody. Child exploitation is an area as a priority for BCP Children's Safeguarding Partnership and our Community Safeguarding Partnership with social care, education, police, housing, NHS, public health and the voluntary sector. Work is underway to ensure all the different strands are coming to the most efficient way that they can to inform shared across the system and ensure partners are well informed of any potential risks and can therefore contribute to safeguarding our most vulnerable children and young people.
Thank you, Richard. I have a question from Keith Mail, who is on Facebook, and he's asked, why is it so hard for ward councillors to get either the BCP antisocial behaviour team or the community police teams to act and deal with issues of antisocial behaviour? Why does it come as a surprise to BCP Council that teenage antisocial behaviour levels increase during school holidays when they are actively closed? When they have actively closed/reduced the opening hours of many youth centres that would help the problem? So thank you, Keith. It's a really important question. It's something that really concerns me, especially as, when we look to things like the antisocial behaviour that happens in my area around sort of Rossmore and that kind of thing. I'm constantly reporting it to our local PCSOs, who are our community support officers for the police, and also to the council, and trying to get that action can be quite challenging. However, I would say that we do work really closely. It is about finding out where the police can act alongside the council to actually reduce some of those issues, and whether that is trying to design some of that crime out by making sure that there's clear sight lines, that things are monitored, that there's lots of people walking around, and those kind of things, or whether it is actually taking a more enforcement-based approach and trying to work with the police to get some of those younger people spoken to by someone in authority. And I'll just give you an example. So in our area, I co-coordinate a neighbourhood watch with the community, and it's really good for sharing that information. We've actually had some arrests that have come from it, from the fact that we have been working together as a community to report some of those issues and share with each other what's going on in the community and be able to tackle it that way. It really, really works. So if you do have a community neighbourhood watch near you, it's worth getting in touch with them and raising those concerns. I would just say in a wider context, we've just had some statistics from the Office of National Statistics. They have actually indicated that there's quite a decrease across the whole of Dorset when it comes to antisocial behaviour. In fact, reducing down by 39% in terms of nuisance complaints, 19%, and then environmental down by 27%, and that's since 2022. So we are seeing some improvements around antisocial behaviour and what the crime rates are showing us. But also we have in our town centres things like our CSAS team who are out patrolling, making sure that there isn't antisocial behaviour. They also do things like seize alcohol from people who are potentially going to cause a bit of chaos, and of course really active on that in terms of protecting the town centre and improving the reputation of the place. I would also just add that on youth services, we do provide a youth service. It's called UP. It's for children and young people, and it provides information, advice and guidance that helps young people with all sorts of issues that they might be facing, whether that is decisions about their future, their health, or how they express themselves. Those services are available for young people. And I would also say we do have some other youth services across the area in some of our more challenging areas. For example, over in Muscliffe Park, there are youth access points where young people can go and speak to volunteers about some of the issues that they are facing. Right, so the next question has come from Katie Jane on Facebook, and it is for Richard, for Councillor Burton. It says, I recently did an FOI request, that's a Freedom of Information request, and there are currently around 400 children in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole awaiting specialist school placements. What is being done about this? And also, why are so many SEND parents pushed into appealing? So Richard, over to you.
Well, yes, thank you, Kate, for asking us this question. And you're quite right, getting the children, young people to be educated in the right place is so important. The council has developed a SEND sufficiency strategy to address the immediate demand for places. The strategy plans to work with schools to increase the availability of local specialist places for local families. In fact, this morning I was at a head teachers forum meeting where this is one of the main topics of conversation. A total of 140 places were delivered in 24-25, and this is in addition to 100 places in the previous 2 years. and approval from the Department of Education for a new special school which will provide 180 places for children with autistic spectrum conditions aged 3 to 18. So you can see a lot of work is being done, but you're right that we're still looking for more places. It's important to clarify that children awaiting provision are currently on roll at school, and additional measures and supports have been put into place to help meet the needs of where they currently are. Long-term placements are being commissioned as part of the SEND sufficiency strategy. The process of commissioning places is complex. All these things always are so complex, and formal legal process set out in the SEND Code of Practice must be followed in order that children can receive the right support at the right time.
Thank you very much, Richard. So my next question is from Deb, who has written on X, and she's asked, could you let me know when I will receive my voting card? There's no sign of anything yet. So just to answer this very quickly, we don't have local elections here in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. They do have elections elsewhere. So I know in Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, there are some mayoral elections across the country, but our cycle, we started this council in 2023 in May, and it will run until 2027. So in 2027, you should get some contact about going to vote in those elections. Thank you. So, Richard, a question for you from Catherine Avery. She has asked, when are you going to build more specialist schools in the BCP area? There are hundreds of children who need a space and all are full and can't meet needs. Some of us are facing a 1 to 2 hour journey there and back as there are no spaces nearby. Due to needs, a satellite hub is not an option in a mainstream school. Will there be any movement on this? Richard.
Well, yes, thank you for that. And this, to a large extent, follows on from the last question I answered. So the council has developed a SEND sufficiency strategy to address the immediate demand for places. And you're quite right, children and young people with SEND having to travel for a long time to and from school is far from ideal. They should be able to spend time learning or socialising with friends. And this is why I think they should be educated within their communities wherever possible. We're working with existing special schools to create a satellite sites to offer more places. That satellite sites within the special schools, not necessarily within the mainstream schools. We are also working with mainstream schools to help develop new resource-based provision on their sites. A total of 140 places were delivered in 24-25. This is addition to the 100 places in previous 2 years, and approval from the Department of Education for new special schools, which I said earlier on. The timing for delivery of the new schools will be confirmed by the DFE when details about the arrangements for establishing new special schools will be announced. The DFE are unable to advise on a timeline at the moment for any announcement, but capital projects are currently underway that will deliver a further 60 places. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance.
Thank you, Richard. So I have a question which is actually about the Christchurch civic officers. It comes from James Deacon on Facebook, who has written, why was Christchurch civic officers sold for only 1.9 million? How much did you get out of it? So we have obviously had these civic centres hanging around for a really long time now, and I've been getting very frustrated at the fact we have to pay business rates on them, security, insurance. We have to keep them up to standard so they're not at risk to anyone. So I'm really delighted that we've been able to finally shift the Christchurch civic officers to an organisation or business that can potentially build them out. We actually got 6 offers for the civic officers over in Christchurch, and we have sold it to CBRE for £1.9 million on an unconditional basis. And of course, CBRE are one of those companies that do tend to build things out or who they're working for, they tend to encourage them to build them out. So I'm really pleased that that has gone ahead, and hopefully whatever they want to do with the site will be quite exciting, and we'll look forward to seeing where they go with it. I would just reassure you, if they do want to do anything different, they will need to come through the planning process. So even though we have sold the building, it doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want with it. They will need to come back to us via the planning process if they do want to, demolish it and build something else, or if they want to convert it and change the use. So there's still a bit more that they need to do with the council, but at least it is off our books, and taxpayers are no longer having to pay those costs. Okay, so we are now going to look at some of our live questions which have come in. We've had a few from residents. I'm just having a look, so I can see I've got one here from Daniel James Butt, who has written, "Dear Councillor Millie Earl, many Poole residents are expressing concern about Poole Town Council tax, particularly the issue of double taxation. Could you please clarify the costs involved and provide the business plan behind this tax? Residents are questioning why we are being charged twice for services that should already be covered. That should already be covered by existing council tax, which is already substantial." So this is about our community governance review. So every area needs to go through a community governance review every 15 years or so. We haven't had one for, I think, decades actually in Poole and Bournemouth. So as our commitment as Lib Dems, we wanted to explore the issue of having town or parish councils like they benefit from in Christchurch, but have that for Poole and Bournemouth, because at the moment what we do have, which is the Charter Trustees, we don't really feel is doing a good enough job in protecting the kind of civic history, and the system of it isn't quite working. So we're looking for different ways in which we can do it. And in Christchurch, they have a town council which looks after their mayoralty, protects their civic history, their heritage, and their identity. And we want to see if that is potentially an option for Poole and Bournemouth. So we went out to an initial expression of interest to community groups and to organisations to say what they felt might work for their area. We then had a working group, which was a politically balanced one, to look at those options and bring forward some recommendations. And those recommendations are now out for consultation. I would just point out on the double taxation issue that Daniel has raised, I think it's really important to look at what BCP Council's role is within it. Our role is to look at governance, look at whether the governance structure is correct and reflects the needs of local people, or whether it doesn't. And like many people, I fought really hard against local government reorganisation. I really didn't like that they were forcing those three very distinct towns with our own individual identities together. And actually we were put into a position where we have people from other towns making decisions on the things that we really care about in Poole, for me as a Poole resident. So what I think is really important is actually whether we do need that additional say for local residents in Poole. And town councils have lots of functions. One of the functions is to provide the mayoralty. One of the other functions is to provide a voice for local people when it comes to planning matters and be able to create neighbourhood plans and take more control of planning in their own areas. And then another function is to look at additional local services that residents may want that go above and beyond what the local authority are providing. So something that really frustrated me is when we inherited the council, we had to make £44 million worth of cuts to local services. And that included some of the last bits of things like Christmas lights and planting and some of those additional things that residents really value. But we couldn't justify them with the pressure that we've heard about within our SEND services, which we hear about within adult social care, and making sure that we are actually meeting our legal statutory duties as a local authority on those services. So what town councils do is they give residents an opportunity for a democratic structure to be able to implement some of those services, those additional services, things like what they do in Christchurch. They run the splash park, they have things like community events, they hold events around Christmas, they hold events in the summer on the Quamps, really kind of very community-based and community-led initiatives. And of course, supporting local charities, supporting local projects and doing those kind of things. So it really is a question for residents. Do they want to have those additional services? Do they feel that they need them? Or would they rather not? And the consultation is there to provide that. One of the things I often get asked about at the moment is around the cost. So it wouldn't be up to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council to make a decision on the costs of these town councils. It will be up to those elected councillors to do it. So if we do go down that route, I would encourage anyone to consider standing for that council and going through that democratic process, having their say, getting elected on a mandate, whether that is, a very low preset like what we have on at the moment, which is £2.50 for the charter trustees. It might remain around that, or if some wanted to look higher into the double figures, essentially for a year, it would either be somewhere between £2.50 all the way up to, I don't want to put a price on it because it's whatever those councillors campaign on, whatever they want to get elected on, that will be delivered. So that's just to give a very brief overview of the Community Governance Review, but I would really encourage you, go and have a look at the consultation that is online. It does look at the proposals there, which cover the whole of Bournemouth and Christchurch. So it's really important to have your say on what you want to see. And like I said, for me, it's about Poole. It's about my town having a say on the things that matter to them. And I really feel that BCP Council, as much as I'm very privileged to lead it, it is a huge local authority, and actually I would like to see some of those communities empowered to be able to make their own decisions about their own areas. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the other questions that have come in. Right. I have had one from... Gosh, there's a lot of comments, not so many questions that I'm seeing. So I've had one from Mark Powell, who is the CEO of Diverse Abilities, which is a charity that provides SEND services for 70 years locally. Mark is concerned at the rate of increase awarded to us that doesn't recognise the increase in minimum wage, national insurance and inflation, and which will put the charity at risk and reduce services. And our fundraising is already targeted to raise 840,000. In real term, this is a cut. Just to put that into context, the government have recently introduced their national insurance hike, which is the employer contribution. And we feel exactly the same, Mark, and I'm sure every other business, charity and organisation across the country feels similarly. It is a really tough time for people out there to balance their books, and it has become a bit of a struggle. But I was going to invite Councillor Burton, to see if you wanted to add anything particularly about this sector and some of the challenges that we're seeing within SEND service provision.
No, I'm just really reiterating what you're saying, Millie. It is a difficult time, and we rely very much on this sector to help us with our services. So I totally understand. If you'd like a further discussion with me, it would be really good to actually meet up so we can discuss this.
Thank you, Richard. And I would invite that as well. Mark, I'd be really willing to talk to you about it, talk about some of how this is impacting you and Diverse Abilities, because it is such an important charity in the local area. And I'm really, really glad that we have it. We have that resource, which I know is so precious to those people who use it. Okay, so let's have a look at another question that I've got coming in. So I've got one from Andrew Tame, which is about antisocial behaviour in Poole. Why are there no CSAS officers in Poole, especially the key with persistent drinkers, illegal scooters and drug dealing? So Andrew, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and check on what our allocation of CSAS is within Poole. I would say at the moment that statistically, Poole is looking pretty good. We're not having a huge amount of issues there, certainly not what we have had in the past. But I think it is really important that we address any of the concerns that are coming up and make sure that we're being reactive when we need to be. I would also really encourage you to report those issues. So if you are seeing illegal scooters and drug dealing, reporting in the issues creates that statistic base, which then means that we can allocate resource more appropriately. Because if we're, for example, only getting reports from Bournemouth and not getting reports from Poole, then that means that we will go, well, Bournemouth obviously has the issue. So it's really important to keep reporting those issues through the police or via the council, via our antisocial behaviour team. And then we can review, whenever we review the statistics, we can then allocate in a much more flexible way to make sure we're being as responsive as possible. Thank you. Okay, so I have now had a question from, Lee Atkins, who has asked, why are you wasting our money trying to push town councils on us? Use that money for things that are needed. So just to say on town councils, we are doing a community governance review. We're not pushing town councils. Community governance review, we are recommended that they take place every 15 years. I think it's a really important part of what we do. We didn't get one. I'm shocked we didn't have one when we went into local government reorganisation. That would have been the obvious time to also review local governance like they did in other areas, but we haven't actually had that in Poole and Bournemouth. So I think it's really important that we do give residents the opportunity to have their say on the local governance structure that they have. In terms of the money being spent on it, a community governance review is standard practice for any council, and we're going to spend the money on it that we would have spent at any other point within our kind of council, making sure we do them every 15 years or so to ensure we have the right level of governance. And then when it comes to the actual money that a town council would use, like I said, that isn't something I can control as a leader of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. It will be up to those town councils that are made up of Poole residents or made up of Bournemouth residents or Southbourne residents to make those decisions on the money and how it will be spent. I would just say there is money that doesn't come out of a kind of precept or a council tax. For example, we have community infrastructure levy, which is literally millions of pounds raised by developers. So we charge developers for development. It's called community infrastructure levy. It's a levy that we take and then we spend on community infrastructure. Now, at the moment, that is all spent via the processes within Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. What would happen is if we had town councils, that money would go to those town councils to decide what to do with it. So money raised in those areas is then spent in those areas. And at the moment, that system isn't quite in place in BCP. So I think it's really important, actually. There are other ways, other bits of money that will be spent by local people rather than being decided upon by Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. Okay, so looking at my next question, I've got one from Catherine Avery, which is, when will you provide one-to-one services for SEN children? My son cannot attend group activities for SEN children. I've asked all counsellors and just get signposted to HAF and groups. The CHD AD criteria is too high to access direct payments. As a working parent, there is no help available. So, Richard, do you want to answer this one for Catherine?
Yes, I mean, I can see, Catherine, you and I have already had some conversations on this by email. What I will do is I'll have another look into this and I'll get back to you in the next few days and see what other support we can provide. I say I'll reread your emails and get back to you on it.
Thank you. So I have a question from Michael Griffin on Facebook. He has asked, hello, can I ask what's being done to bring Bournemouth and Poole back to the beautiful towns they used to be, not places where there are endless closed shops and streets that people don't want to walk down for safety. So thank you, Michael, for this question. And I'm at the town hall today in Bournemouth town centre, and I spend a lot of time in Poole as well as a local resident there. And I think that they're not perfect. I don't think any town centre is perfect now, as we've moved particularly towards things like online shopping, different ways in which we interact with our public spaces and that kind of thing. What I think is our challenge is actually around how we adapt. It's not about taking it back to what it was. Department stores are dead. They've closed all over. We've also lost a lot of our retail as that has switched to online. So we need to actually look at updating and adapting our town centres into different places where people can go for experiential things, to go out for food, to go and enjoy activities, rather than purely for that retail offer that they used to be. At the moment, our council is working with the Bournemouth Town Centre bid on some of those kind of basics, things like painting lampposts, making sure that we are doing that annual weed treatment, sweeping away the leaves, making sure the bins are looking a bit better, especially with all those stickers on bins at the moment from the vapes, and also tackling some of the graffiti that we have. And I think it's really important that we continue to work with not just the bid, but business owners themselves, who are often the ones occupying some of the shop fronts, and of course the landlords who own those buildings and the frontage of their shops as well, to make sure that we are working together to make it look the best that it can be. We have, just on the antisocial behaviour issue there, we've received £750,000 in a successful bid on the Safer Streets Fund. It will be used to implement some of those initiatives that we want, aimed at improving that safety across Bournemouth, and we're working as part of the BCP or the Safer BCP partnership to deliver some projects, particularly around addressing crime and antisocial behaviour, using some of that data that we have, and being able to actually communicate and engage and deliver some of that prevention as well. And you can go and find out a little bit more about that at saferbcp.co.uk. And I just wanted to comment on Paul briefly, in that Paul I think that it's a different kettle of fish. I think Poole has found a really good place in the market where we have some other services in Poole as well. For example, we have things like education and learning within the Dolphin Centre. We also have some NHS services delivered down there. And actually it means that people are going into town for different reasons other than just retail. And I think it's actually having that diverse range of services and reasons for people to go in, which makes it a really thriving place. And that is just to acknowledge the work of Poole Town Centre bid, who we've recently been working on some of our town centre improvement funds, so providing the money, BCP providing the money to the bid to be able to put the amazing mural down on the underpass off the bus stop, which looks fantastic, and huge thanks to TechMoon for doing that. And some of those smaller interventions, they actually make the biggest difference, because they bring it back up to somewhere where people want to go. They add a bit of vibrancy and colour. They create spaces where we think, wow, actually that's a really cool bit of artwork, and people go in then to experience that. So I'm really pleased with how Poole is coming along, and like I said, we're working with the business improvement districts to improve where we can. But for me, Bournemouth is the challenge, because it hasn't quite found its future just yet, and I'm really pleased to be working with our partners right across the area to try and do that. But at the moment, we're getting the basics right, dealing with some of those kind of on the ground issues. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left. I'm just going to go back to our list of questions over here. So I've had one here, which is from Rio Argent. And Rio has written, sorry, I keep getting covered by the questions. The trust in elected councillors across the community appears low, which is no doubt an issue when any new ideas and projects are introduced, because it stops residents really getting behind what could be some great changes. Have you considered as a team what could be done to change opinions and get residents more engaged and on side? It would be good to work together again, rather than feel like decision making without democracy, because relations are so strained. Thanks. So thank you, Rio, for that question. And I agree. I think there's a real issue with kind of any elected people at the moment. I think trust is at an all-time low in our elected institutions. And I particularly looked at things like what happened during COVID and some of the behaviour that we saw from elected people and how that spilled out. I think from a democratic perspective, we as local councillors, as elected people, we have a job, which is to build that trust within our own communities in particular. And I love my community. I was born within my ward. I'm really honoured to represent it. And I champion what goes on within our area and support lots of local groups, run lots of different community services and things like that. And then when it comes around to re-election, it's up to those residents to look at that work and decide whether they want that or whether they would actually prefer someone else to be in that position. So I think the democracy really happens at election time, and sometimes we forget that. So we campaigned quite heavily on this idea of having more power passed down to Paul. Things like for the community governance review, we wouldn't be able to go back into the three councils. That would require an act of parliament, and government policy at the moment shows very clearly that government want unitary authorities of 500,000 residents or more. However, my commitment to the residents of Poole and during our campaign was very much around putting power into local people's hands. And we were elected, as Lib Dems in particular, but actually across the Three Towns Alliance, we were elected on that mandate. And it's that mandate that we want to deliver. And of course, there is a consultation here. We need to make sure that residents kind of still agree with that. If they want to come forward with any other proposals or have a look at what we're putting down, we're not always going to get it right in that sense. But that's why we have those processes within the different terms. But I would say, this is why elections are really, really important, because you choose who is going to be running your council for the next 4 years. And that is a huge amount of responsibility, a huge amount of money, of taxpayers' money, something I take incredibly seriously. I think you're right. If we could build a bit more trust on a wider basis, I think there's this idea of kind of BCP Council being whatever people want to think of it. It's our job to kind of try and build that trust again and turn it around. But I would say it starts within our communities. Richard, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, just your reflections as a councillor.
Well, no, I mean, you're quite right. And social media actually can help and sometimes can really hinder in this. What I would encourage is, of course, most ward councillors run surgeries at least once a month. And it's a great opportunity to go and speak to them. I know in my ward, I'm Bearwood and Merley, we run two, and we have lots of people come to talk to us, and you can have that conversation and explain and hear the comments. So I would really recommend you go and see your ward councillors and have that discussion.
Thank you, Richard. That is a really important point. Okay, so we are now at 12. We've gone over our time. So I think all that's left for me to do is say thank you ever so much to everyone who has submitted questions for this and has asked questions throughout as well. Like I said, if there are any questions that haven't been answered, then our team will be looking through the questions throughout the day and responding to those as best they can. But of course, like I would say, kind of on Rio's point, if you do have any questions, you are very welcome to approach us individually as councillors, whether you want to email us or get in touch in a different way. I'm always happy to answer questions and basically be there if you want to raise any issues within your own communities. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.